It's about time I get DiCecco on from InsideTheBirds.com, Mister. I feel like you are. How can we? What do we call you at that website? What's the athlete you want to compare yourself to then?
Just a staff reporter, content producer, man. I try to do it all.
Oh, you know what? Well, you know who does it all in the NFL? Christian McCaffrey. So there you go. You're the Christian McCaffrey of ITV. How's that?
I appreciate that, Jeff.
So overall, Andrew, though, what are your thoughts on the Eagles at the midway point of the season?
Well, I mean, you have to be excited if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I mean, the team is firing on all cylinders right now, Jeff. As you know, you and me sit next to each other in the press box, so we sort of, bounce ideas off each other, and we see the team grow continually each week and really answer a lot of questions, check off a lot of boxes. I mean, you're seeing a team that's able to now put together strong second halves and complete games now. You're seeing a more disciplined football team, only 4 penalties last week for 31 yards, which is something I've mentioned to you being a problematic area you'd like to see them clean up. Third down efficiency increased to 50%. Like this team, and by their leader, Nick Sirianni, they are improving incrementally even each week, and they're not even hitting their stride yet. And it all starts with, like I said, Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. And you're seeing a complete football team, unfold before your eyes. And I don't buy into, they haven't played anybody. They're playing who's on their schedule, and they're winning in convincing fashion.
Yeah, we were talking about this during the Steelers game, right? Well, people go, who would they play? Then we're saying, well, they beat Minnesota, they beat Dallas. In our opinion, they're the other two really good teams in this conference. So I don't know what you have to do at this point to kind of shut the haters up.
Well, I mean, and I don't think that they're worried about that, Jeff. You know what's crazy about this team is that they're being discussed ad nauseum, and rightfully so, being the only undefeated team in the NFL. But they're not really paying attention. And teams say that, but I really believe it with this team that they're not really paying attention to what the outside noise is saying, what the pundits are saying. I think they're really focused on the mission and really trying to go 1-0. I mean, they say that every week. We hear them say it every week. But I really do think they're trying to go 1-0, and that's their mindset, not looking too far ahead, not really worried about what other people are saying about them. And I think that's you're seeing it, a focused team come out each week. I mean, how long have we seen, whether it be Chip Kelly or even Doug Peterson in the latter years, they come out flat and they're not able to really put it together, and the game sort of gets derailed and goes sideways. This team comes out strong, and now they're starting to put together 4 quarters, which it's scary to see.
Even last week's game, right? It was 14-14 at halftime. You could say they didn't play up to snuff, but in a way it didn't feel like that because they were moving the ball. It's really they just had 1 turnover in that first half last week.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that's the thing. It's like you look up and they're winning in convincing fashion, right? But when you really look at it, and the Eagles, they're able to pinpoint certain areas that they need to improve on, and they're not resting on their laurels. I mean, it all starts with Jalen Hurts and his message. We left money on the table, right? That's the message he's conveying every week to the team. And with that mindset and always looking to fine tune different details to become the team that they know that they can be. I mean, that's special, man. And not a lot of teams are able to do that. There's a lot of complacency that happens when you're winning, and you start to read the press clippings, and you start to really feel yourself. But I think that's not happening, and the Eagles leaders on that team aren't allowing it to happen. So you are going to see different things throughout the season that they just, when you think that, but they don't do that, they don't defend the run well. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if they come out this week and they bottle up Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson and then make that point null and void.
What's weird about this team? It doesn't feel like, outside of A.J. Brown and maybe Miles Sanders, there isn't a lot of guys that are on social media. Like Jalen Hurts, some of them runs his Twitter. Devonta Smith, I know he's not really on it. Like he tells me he kind of turns that off during the season. Same with Dallas Goedert. It just feels like you're right. This is why they don't get caught up in their own hype, because they don't see guys like Jeff Kerr and Andrew DiCecco tweeting about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's part of it, man. Like social media is enormous right now, and it is such a distraction if you don't have the proper mindset and the leadership. And like I said, the Eagles are a team that they don't allow anything to disrupt the mission. And like I said, that really starts at the top with Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. And you're right, that is something that I've noticed. I mean, you don't see a lot of the tweeting back and forth or this and that. You might see a celebratory, 8-0 or whatever tweet. and you don't hear from them the rest of the week, which I think is good. And they're all really just sort of it's the camaraderie, it's the brotherhood that they have, and they're really forging something really special there at the NovaCare complex.
One thing I like about this team too, we talk about the celebratory stuff and all that. I love the 24-hour rule with them. It's like, okay, we get 24 hours and we just kind of go crazy over a win, and then it's back to work. It's like the Jalen Hurts rule. I call it the Jalen Hurts rule. It's, once 8 a.m. comes the next day, all right, that's it. Like, that's one thing you hear from not just Hurts, but everybody on this team every single week.
Yeah, what does Jalen say? Flush it, regardless. And yeah, it's like the 24-hour rule. I mean, you see them, they're enjoying the moment after the game, but then you get the sense and you see it the next day, it's all back to business. And let's focus on the next week. I mean, Jeff, when we were at the Steelers game, I mean, in the locker room, they were riding stationary bikes, getting ready for Thursday Night Football. That right there, you see Ted Rath, their strength and conditioning guy, just running around the locker room and getting everybody all pumped up and focused and recalibrated. And I think just having that mindset is so valuable and an underrated aspect to teams. And you're seeing they're automatically turning the page and they're getting ready for the next opponent. And that, I can't emphasize enough how special and how rare that is, because even those Patriots that went undefeated a couple of, I guess it was a number of seasons ago now, there were areas where you could tell that they were feeling themselves and maybe looking too far ahead. And they had a lot of veterans on that team. So I think right now the leadership and the locker room pillars that they have in place is really special.
I did think it was funny, the whole stationary bike thing. Like when Bob Groats and I asked Brandon Graham, what are you doing? Why are you on a bike right after the game? And he's like, well, it's Monday. And we're like, no, it's not Sunday. And then you realize, oh, wait, they're playing on Thursday. And then, you were with me when we were talking to Robert Quinn, and he's just like, yeah, I don't know how he did it, honestly. Gets traded. Then he pretty much has like 2 days to learn the playbook. Gets 20 snaps on Sunday. Everybody's making a big deal. He played 7 on Thursday. I'm like, dude, you guys realize he's only been on this team a week.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's not getting a bye week this year, and he's 32 years old. You're not going to ideally see him play the lion's share of the snaps, as you know. Anywhere from, I would say, 12 to 18 snaps a game would be realistic to expect from Robert Quinn. He's a complementary piece that's going to spell and alleviate some of the pressure from those veterans like a Brandon Graham, and even take away some snaps from a Josh Sweat and keep these guys fresh for the stretch run. And that's exactly why he brought somebody like that in. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to fathom how he's able to just sort of, you're in Chicago one day. He said you see the eagle in the middle of the locker room and you realize you're in a different place and you have to get reacclimated, and he's just out there and he's playing football, man. I mean, he's a veteran. He's done it a lot, logged a lot of miles in this league, and he's going to be a valuable addition, I believe, for the Eagles down the stretch here.
I do too. One thing I liked about Quinn, like, he understood right away, like, this is a business. Like, if you keep it a business relationship and don't make things personal, you're going to be so much better off. I feel like that's going to rub off on a lot of young guys here that are due for some contracts.
Yeah, exactly. And then that just goes to bringing in quality guys in the locker room that have been around, that know the business. And I think just having those type of personalities in a locker room, it's just an amalgamation of just positive leadership, and they just seem to all be willing to lend a hand or an ear to a younger player and really show them the ropes about how the NFL business is conducted. So again, that's such a valuable addition on many levels.
I can't believe I just went 30 minutes without even mentioning this yet, but Odell Beckham to Dallas Cowboys. It seems like they're trying to will it to existence now. Micah Parsons made his pitch. Jerry Jones, envisioning the star on his helmet. Like Michael Parsons pretty much said to Odell Beckham, come here and get us a Super Bowl. What are your thoughts on if the Cowboys are able to land him?
Well, that's a great question. It'd be a good addition because you're looking at a guy who I think had 300 yards and 5 touchdowns for the Rams when he came over late in the season or midway through the season. And so he can obviously still play, right? But the question is his health. He's coming off, I believe it's about 9 months since that torn ACL in the Super Bowl. Jay Glazer, I believe, from Fox Sports said that he should be ready this week should be healthy and full go. So the Cowboys need some help at receiver. That's really one of their weak points when you really assess their roster. And outside of CeeDee Lamb, who really isn't a 1, Jeff, I think he's more of a 2 and a complimentary receiver. He's not meant to be the focal point of a passing attack. And then you have Michael Gallup, who really does need to step up. I think he can be a difference maker as somebody who can affect all 3 levels. Jalen Tolbert, a guy who I really like coming out of the draft in the third round out of South Alabama, hasn't lived up to standard just yet. So there's a big gaping hole there that he's not able to really fill. So I think that there's a place for him. He's going to walk right into some targets. The question is, there are going to be some suitors, right? I think you're going to look at a team like the 49ers, maybe the Bills, viable playoff contenders or team that are looking for that piece to give them that playoff push and make the difference. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out for sure.
Yeah, I think it's funny. You just mentioned there are only 3 receivers that might be available for Sunday there.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So I don't know how, and they're playing. They have a tough schedule ahead. They're certainly they have a lot to play for. So I mean, I really think that there's a lot of incentive to bring in another pass catcher. I don't know that it'll be Odell Beckham just this week, or it'll be anybody of name. They're going to have to. They need some bodies right now. They're kind of in dire straits there.
Which kind of crazy, right? I'm glad you brought up the schedule, because even if Odell would sign with them, say to them, they got 3 games in 12 days, so he's not playing against Green Bay Sunday. Then you got to play Minnesota, and then you got the quick turnaround for Thanksgiving, and you got to play the Giants. Like, there's a possibility he might not even be available till after that Giants game.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to get into football shape, right? I mean, how many times have we seen veteran players? Remember Des Bryant a few years ago with the Saints. It takes time to get into football shape and learn the plays and get that rapport with your quarterback. He may not even be a viable factor for that offense until later on. And by that point, like you said, the schedule gets really clustered late in the season, and they have so much to play for. You don't know. His addition may be null and void by that point.
How good do you think the Cowboys are?
Well, I think their defense is tremendous, and they fly around and everything, but I think they're ultimately going to be handicapped by their offense, because I don't know that they're in the position right now, Jeff, to play complementary football. So, I mean, I do think the Eagles are the class of the NFC East, can confidently say that, and I think it's going to stay that way, because ultimately I don't think the Cowboys have enough on offense to move the needle.
What do you think about the Vikings then?
Well, I mean, you and I have talked about this. I mean, before the season, I anticipated the Vikings being one of those teams to watch and being one of the prominent teams in the NFL this year to really make a deep run. But I think that they pose as the most, probable threat to the Eagles down the stretch. But the Eagles matchup, if you look at the matchup, and obviously the game isn't played on paper, you look at it and the Eagles handled them, especially in the trenches where the game is obviously won. But also, I think skill players, I would take the Eagles skill guys. I think you look at the trenches, I take the Eagles offensive line, of course, defensive line, of course. Secondary is playing at an all-pro level and very cohesive right now. I just think across the board, the Eagles are the better team. So it could very well come down to those 2 teams, but I think right now the Eagles are head and shoulders above the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, it seems like, too, the Eagles' goal isn't just the NFC East, obviously. Like, I don't want to say they got wrapped up, because they don't. But it does feel like the ultimate goal here is get home field advantage. And right now, in a way, you got a 2-game cushion because you beat Minnesota, and you got a 3-game cushion over Dallas because they own the head-to-head there. So, I mean, when do you think they could potentially say, okay, we got home field advantage, we might want to tone it down a bit, even if they're undefeated at that point?
I think you could see, if you remember back to 2004, back in the later part of the season, maybe about week 14 or 15, they had to take their foot off the gas a little bit. I think you saw a guy like Jeff Blake play quarterback, and your guy Eric McCoo, the running back from Penn State, got some carries, and Greg Lewis was playing a lot. I don't know that this Eagles team is wired quite like that. I think if you poll any of the team leaders, I'm pretty sure they're going to say, we want to, if they have something to play for, like an undefeated season, knowing what we know, I'm pretty sure that you're going to see a lot of guys say, hey, we want to play. Now, I don't know if the risk outweighs the reward there, but you do have a chance. You could potentially have a chance to accomplish history and be in the books in that regard. But I would probably say if they have everything wrapped up, you might see them take their foot off the gas around week 15 or so. Yeah,
which is crazy, right? That whole week 16 game against the Cowboys may not mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, before the season, we look at that as being, the game that could determine it all, right? The playoff seeding and everything. And now that game could just be a game in which you see Gardner Minshew, or, you start to see maybe Trey Sermon gets locked some carries. The Eagles are in a good position right now, and it's by stacking these wins and taking care of business early. You hear so many teams say that, but it does really afford you so many more luxuries down the stretch. when you're really looking to make a deep run in the playoffs.
There's something we haven't really talked about in the press box. And do you play the whole how would the Eagles match up with the Chiefs? How would the Eagles match up with the Bills? Because they're the two teams that seems like, okay, that's who you stack the Eagles up to, right?
Yeah, and it's something I thought about when they added Robert Quinn. It's like, how do you stop a Josh Allen or a Pat Mahomes, right? Because I think the Eagles right now are really good or strong across the board defensively, but they do miss a couple of depth pieces, particularly at third safety. And I thought they needed another pass rusher. And adding a guy like Robert Quinn keeps all the guys fresh to be able to chase and bring down a guy and pursue and bear down on a guy like a Pat Mahomes or a Josh Allen. And I mean, right now, I think they almost have to play a perfect game offensively. You can't afford any drive to stall. You have to capitalize on points. But let's not forget, the Chiefs look far and away like a team that really misses Tyreek Hill the other night. I mean, they would win those games going away last season and years past, and they had to grind it out a little bit there. Like, they're not winning in this convincing fashion anymore. The Eagles are, and I think that the Eagles have a more complete team, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Jalen Hurts, you're seeing the evolution of a young quarterback being able to make the throws necessary to win games. And I mean, he had a 91-yard drive last week. He did a 79-yard drive last week. The Eagles are finding ways to score and capitalize on drives and not come away with 3 points. And I think that is so paramount. We were talking about going up against teams like the Bills and the Chiefs. And I think the Eagles are really showing growth in that area.
Yeah, one thing when I got to watch Bills Sunday, and this is the first time I really got to watch them live all season. I've been watching like replays of the games and stuff. I think they're really deep at receiver. But I was thinking to myself, who really is their number two? Like, you know who the Eagles' number two is. You know who the Chiefs' number two is. Heck, you even know who Baltimore's number two is. But Buffalo, it's like it could be a bunch of people, and I think that's a real problem for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably guess it. Suffice to say, it would be Gabe Davis, but I mean, it's very streaky. I mean, you need to have. I think you do need to have a number two that you can lean on and go to in critical moments, right? I think the Eagles have that in Devontae Smith. He's pretty much like the Eagles have a 1A and a 1B really at receiver, so there's a luxury there. But yeah, I think that you could say that, and I also think you can make that argument for the Chiefs as well. I don't know that they have a bona fide number two. I mean, they have Juju, they have Hardeman, and they have some guys, but not really one that's going to take that mantle as being the number two. So it's a lot of role players in many regards. So I mean, I think the Eagles really have a lot going for them on the offense, and they're pretty stacked at receiver. I mean, having Zach Pascal as your number four, I mean that really tells you how deep they are.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Zach Pascal. Right, I feel like he doesn't get talked about enough. And Devonta Smith, when I talked to him this week, he brought him up a lot. Say, hey, look, right. I don't think you realize how much Zach Pascal has done for our wide receiver.
Yeah, I thought that was, and I hate the term underrated. I think that's overused, but I thought that was a very underserved and under-discussed signing because of what his familiarity with Nick Sirianni and with the Colts, of course, but also the veteran leadership, locker room presence that he represents. He knows the culture, that the whole dog mentality thing. He's really able to reinforce that within the locker room. But just being a tough, gritty, hard-nosed veteran that's going to block on the perimeter, that's going to set the example for a very young wide receiver room, and be a mentor for a lot of these guys. And like I said, reinforce Nick Sirianni's message. And I think that when he made that 34, when he had that 34-yard touchdown, you saw a team that was really excited for him, because he does a lot of things that don't really end up in the box score or the stat sheet, or really doesn't show up to the average fan when they're watching the game. But he does a lot of things to help contribute to wins, Jeff, as you know. And I think the team was really happy for him to see him get his catches and his opportunities. And I think he's going to be really valuable down the stretch here, much like you saw Torrey Smith come alive a little bit in the Eagles' 2017 postseason run.
One thing I thought was interesting, and again, this has to do with an Eagles rival, but the Giants, right? They're 6-2. They're coming out of the bye week. They don't have a very tough first two games out. It's the Lions and the Texans, and we know you can't sleep on the Lions, but doesn't it feel like they need to be 8-2 to make that run at the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm looking at, and I was looking at, I don't know, their margin for error is so small, and their defense, everything seems to be clicking, and Brian Dable's doing a fantastic job. Mike Kafka, of course, the OC, but I don't know how they're going to be able to score points, Jeff. That's where my big like when I'm looking at the Giants, I'm like, I don't really know what this team's identity is, right? I think that Saquon Barkley has been incredible this season. He's been phenomenal. But outside of that, you have Kenny Golladay, who's been a disappointment after signing a 4-year, $72 million deal in 2021. It feels like it was forever ago now, but and you have a cast of characters at receiver, such as, a Wan'Dale Robinson, Marcus Johnson, David Sills, Darius Slayton. I don't really know where the points are supposed to be coming from.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because Golladay was a limited participant in practice. He seems to be back, but his attitude has totally changed. I saw an interview. I think it was Bob Brookover who did the interview with him and he's just like, look, I'm just here. Like, I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. Like, it doesn't feel like he's kind of checked out.
Well, here's what I'll say to that. I mean, he sounds a lot different from a guy who demanded a trade earlier in the season. And you know what? Winning changes everything. And he also knows that he's walking into targets, right? Kadarius Toney's no longer there. So it's a lot easier to have a positive attitude when you have the record that you do. You're sitting in a playoff position and you're walking into targets. So I thought that attitude adjustment came at an interesting time. Now we'll see what happens because he has been very unproductive when he has been healthy. Let's not discount that. I mean, Sterling Shepard in 3 games is more productive than Kenny Golladay has been. Marcus Johnson in 5 games is more productive than he's been. Wan'Dale Robinson in 4 games is more productive than Kenny Golladay. He's being paid to be a bona fide, surefire top receiver, and he's really underperformed. Obviously, he's dealing with things like the knee injury and things like that, but he's got to deliver. If the Giants want to go where the record indicates they're headed, they need a much bigger performance out of their receiving core, and that starts with Kenny Golladay. Where
do you think the Giants are going to end up ultimately this season?
I think they could be one of those teams that we're looking at the final week of the season, and they're fighting for playoff. They're fighting to make it into the playoffs because I really do think that eventually you're going to see some chinks in the armor, and I don't know how sustainable their winning streak's going to be with the offense that they have. I don't know that they're equipped to play complementary football, and I think you might see them as one of those teams that fizzle out. Very rarely do you see teams be able to put it together. You see the peaks and valleys of a season, and I think they're going to be one of those teams that they peak too early and then they start to fizzle out when all the chips are on the table.
I'm curious about that Week 15 matchup. We got a while. Is it week? No, it's Week 14 they play.
14, yeah.
Yeah. 15's the Bears. But I'm curious how that's going to play out. I know it's a month from now, but I really don't know what the Giants are going to be. I mean, they should be at least going Thanksgiving 8-2, but then they could be 8-4 going to that game, or if they have a slip up, they could be a totally different team a month from now.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. These two teams right now could be on opposite ends of the spectrum come Week 14. I think the Eagles could be they're going to be in the driver's seat, and obviously health withstanding, they're going to have to be. They might be in position to ease off a little bit, whereas the Giants might have a lot to play for at that time. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it's so far away right now that so many different things can happen. But right now, as we sit on November 10th, I think that I just don't know how sustainable the Giants' winning streak is going to be given their offensive deficiencies.
Washington, obviously, the Eagles play Monday night. It's not the Carson Wentz revenge game that we thought it was going to be, but it's more of we're going to get the Taylor Heineke show. And,
right.
I like the kid. I think he's going to be a fine backup quarterback in this league. He's going to be in the league for a while, but I don't know. After watching that game on Sunday against Minnesota, you can see the limitations with him.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a guy who the last 3 starts, I think he has a 63% completion percentage, and he's been sacked 6 times, 3 of them in which came last week. The Eagles, last time they played Washington, of course, had the sack bonanza for 9 of them, and predominantly coming off the edge. And I think this is going to be a game where you see a quarterback like Taylor Heineke feel, press a little bit to make plays down the field, which could lend itself to being vulnerable on the edges and taking some sacks. And I think that's where you could see a guy like a Josh Sweat or Brandon Graham or even a Robert Quinn get his first sack as an Eagle, bear down on tackles like Charles Leno and and Cornelius Lucas, their right tackle, I think that they're going to be in for a long night, because I think the Eagles are in position now to pin their ears back, go after a backup quarterback. Obviously, the Washington Commanders saw what the Eagles, what the Houston Texans did as far as running the football, 137 yards on 27 carries for Dameon Pierce. I think you're going to see a lot of a downhill element from Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. Remember, Antonio Gibson had a pretty strong showing early on before the game got out of reach and the game script flipped. So you could see them try to go back to the well there and see if the Eagles are in position to bottle up the run. But ultimately, Jeff, we know what's going to happen here. They might keep it competitive for a little while, but the Eagles are the better team and they're going to pull away. I would expect by halftime that game could get out of hand. It could be at least a 10-point lead going into the break.
I do have to ask, what Jared Leto movie did you have on your mind when you said that?
I don't know, man.
Maybe you saw the Joker face and it just kind of popped up on you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just that when I see that last name Leno, I automatically go to the actor.
Yeah, I would think of Jay Leno first, but maybe that's just
or Jay Leno. Yeah.
Yeah, it all depends if you got your car or late night fix on. But,
well, it's a good thing I got my iced coffee here.
Yeah, I have my orange juice this morning, so I'm good. What iced coffee did you get?
Dunkin' Donuts. Actually, it's cold brew, just completely black, nothing in it.
Oh, cold brew is good, by the way. I gotta go with you on that one. So, overall though, where do you stack the Eagles in terms of the NFL hierarchy? Do you got them above Buffalo, below Buffalo?
Above. I do. I have them above Buffalo right now. I think that you have to look at some factors, right? I think you have to look at the stretch down, going down the stretch. I don't think the Eagles would allow themselves to have a game like the Buffalo Bills just had against the Jets. I don't think the Eagles' leadership, I don't think Jalen Hurts would ever allow that. So that's when I look at the two teams, there are different facets to the roster and to their makeup that I see some discrepancies. And I think the Eagles are just from pillar to post as far as leadership, as far as talent, as far as the ability to turn the page and focus on the task at hand. I don't think the Eagles would allow a game like that. And I think that right there is a determining factor and sets teams apart when you're looking at a champion or a team that's just really good. And the Buffalo Bills are a really good team, but I think the Eagles have the ingredients to be a championship team.
I know we're only halfway through here and the Super Bowl's 4 months away, but who would you pick right now to play in the Super Bowl?
I would probably take the Chiefs and the Eagles. I think that the way the season could unfold, those two teams could meet each other in the Super Bowl. It could be Andy Reid versus Nick Sirianni.
That would be fun. I would definitely. I'm all for Chiefs Eagles, by the way. But you're not on the Baltimore hype train like I am.
I think Josh Allen is a phenomenal talent, and I really like what they're building. The way that he plays the game. He plays the game physical, but he also plays it reckless. And I don't know how sustainable his style of play is going to be as far as running. He takes a lot of hits. He's a big guy, but he takes a lot of hits. Guys bounce off him like bowling pins, but it only takes one hit. And Jalen Hurts is a really smart runner, makes really sound decisions. And I think that he plays the game in a smart manner, but he always has health at the forefront. And I don't know that Josh Allen always does. And I think that could be that, and you're starting to see that right now. We have to wait and see what what happens with his elbow. But I mean, there's already things like that surfacing. So I don't know how his Cowboy style of play is going to lend itself to the full scope of an NFL season.
We talked about earlier in the show, I think it's when you were backstage, about how Jalen Hurts just doesn't run like he used to. Remember, that was like the big criticism. Well, he wasn't throwing no passing touchdowns. Well, he's had 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions since then. Like you said, he's proven every time you want to criticize the Eagles on something, they seem to prove you wrong the next game. But what do you like about Hurts, like just not taking off as much anymore?
Well, I think he's looking long-term, right? He knows how valuable he is to the team, and he needs to make sure that he's available for all the games and for a greater purpose. He always talks about the mission, and I think that's always on his mind, and being smart and being able – but for him to be able to make these decisions in real time is so remarkable and so difficult, to know when to pull up, to know when to get out of bounds, to see players coming from behind you and get down. I mean, you see quarterbacks like Mahomes, and I've mentioned Josh Allen, that don't have that foresight or or that presence on the field to know where it's coming from. And Jalen's just a smart player, and I don't think he puts himself in harm's way. I'm sure coaches have been in his ear, but I think he also knows how valuable he is and needs to make sure that he's available. And he just a heads-up player, man.
What team do you think has been the most disappointing so far this year?
Disappointing. Well, I thought the Bengals were going to come out and really replicate their success from last season. Obviously, they've been really turbulent this year. So, I mean, given the talent that they had, unfortunately, they're without Jamar Chase for a little bit. But, I mean, I thought that they were going to come out and be front runners to be the class of the AFC again. And I don't think that's going to be the case this year.
So you got go ahead.
That?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, well, how about yourself?
Oh, I'll tell you what. I think to me right now it kind of is Green Bay. I saw a fall, but I didn't think they were going to be like a 3-6. I don't even remember.
Yeah, I mean, for the NFC, I agree with you. Green Bay is really underwhelming. You have to wonder when they're going to turn to Jordan Love. I mean, I don't know if you saw that Rasul Douglas presser or locker room hit the other day. I mean, I don't know how close that locker room may be to imploding. I'm not there, obviously, but it doesn't seem like they're in a good place. I mean, I mean, Aaron Jones hasn't practiced yet this week. He's got the ankle. They just seem like a rudderless ship right now, for lack of a better term. And you have to wonder if they're going to be able to ever put it together to be able to make themselves even just a respectable team in the NFC. I don't see it happening. You
see such a difference in leadership between Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Hurts. Like, Aaron Rodgers is going on Pat McAfee and complaining about his football team, and I like Pat McAfee, but like, there's a reason why he gives Aaron Rodgers like the snowball questions. They're bros, and it bothers me because you're getting this unleashed version of Aaron Rodgers who's saying, "I'm smarter than you," or "I don't really care what the national media thinks." Well, maybe you should. Maybe you should care what your own teammates think.
Yeah, I've had a problem with Aaron's leadership. I mean, it can't always be they. It should be I and we. As a leader, that's the message you need to convey. And I think you're seeing a lot of finger pointing, a lot of they. They need to catch the ball. They didn't do this right. They didn't block. They got penalized. The Eagles would never. Jalen Hurts would never do that. There's leader. Tom Brady would never do that. There's leaders. It's inherent, right? You either have it or you don't. And I think they're sort of the Packers are sort of going as Aaron Rodgers goes. You're seeing somebody who likes to do a lot of finger pointing, it seems like, and absolve himself. And leadership starts with accountability. I think that's the foundation for it. And he doesn't seem like he's very accountable right now. And I think you're starting to see a locker room that's starting to fracture, Jeff.
Yeah. Don't you think? And it might be because they're in the NFC South, but don't you think Tampa Bay is kind of, as bad as they're running the football, as bad as they are stopping the run now, don't you kind of feel like they're going to turn around?
I do. I've learned a long time ago never to count Tom Brady out, and obviously they're, they have a lot of veterans there that are equipped to make a long run, make a deep run here, and that's a team that could be one of those final teams standing when the dust sort of settles here. But right now it's a little muddied. We don't really know. When people say this team hasn't beaten anybody, well, show me the somebodies, okay? Because we don't know. I mean, the Tampa Bay is a team that's streaky week to week. They could be there when the dust settles, but we don't know that. So, I mean, yes, to answer your question, we'll have to see how it goes. But a Tom Brady-led team should never be counted out, and they have the pieces in place to be able to make a postseason run. And the Eagles could get their rematch. Who knows?
Andrew, once again, I appreciate you coming on. Finally got you to come on. I've been trying to get you on since the first week of this show, it seems like.
And I appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun, Jeff.
Yeah, I got to get all you ITV guys in here just in one room. Besides listening to your podcast, I got to get all you guys just in here and we can just complain about football together.
I mean, I think that'd be fun, man. It'd be a lot of great discussion right there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you got planned for ITV this week?
Well, I have my fantasy football article coming out today. I'll do my X Factors for Monday Night Football. And then obviously you and I will be at the game there on Monday, and I'll be doing my observation piece and then a post-game story after that. So it's going to be a lot of content coming. There's the podcast for ITB drops tomorrow. Be sure to check out the Q&A podcast, which dropped. There's great stuff with Quentin Michael and Jason Avant. And, I mean, there's just a lot of great content coming down the pipeline, much like yourself.
Yep, InsideTheBirds.com. Make sure to check Andrew's articles. Check Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan on there. I promise you will not be disappointed if you want to hear about the Eagles. Andrew, thanks for coming on, my friend.
Have a great day, Jeff.